Imagine standing on the edge of a precipice, holding a single, heavy thread. If that thread snaps, the engines of the modern world shut down. The lights go out in cities thousands of miles away. The global economy shudders to a violent halt. You are not looking at a metaphor. You are looking at a narrow ribbon of deep navy blue water in the Middle East. This is the Strait of Hormuz, a geographic bottleneck where 21% of the world's energy moves every single day, under the constant, unblinking watch of military batteries. It is the jugular vein of humanity. When you float on the surface here, the sheer scale of the massive steel giants moving through the water is almost impossible to process. These are supertankers, the size of upright skyscrapers, carrying 20 million barrels of oil and a fifth of the world's liquefied natural gas. They are carving a path straight toward the hungry ports of India, Japan, and China. This passage is only 21 miles wide at its tightest point, but the actual path these massive ships can take is much smaller. A modern tanker sitting 25 meters deep in the water cannot simply steer wherever it wants. The southern shoreline is a treacherous, hidden labyrinth of jagged reefs and shallow sandbanks. To avoid tearing their hulls open, these ships are forced to hug the deep natural trenches that run incredibly close to the Iranian coastline. They follow a strict international maritime path that is only 3 kilometers wide in each direction. This is a high-stakes game of precision, played out in a very crowded, very dangerous room. The margin for error is zero. We all remember when a single ship blocked the Suez Canal, and the world seemed to hold its breath. But in this strait, the stakes are exponentially higher. Let us look at what happens when the balance slips. Imagine it is March the 12th, 2026. An emergency broadcast echoes out of Washington. The United States desperately releases 50 million barrels of oil from its reserves, trying to stop the markets from an absolute free fall. But it is too late. The shockwave has already hit. Across India, neighborhood kitchens go dark because the natural gas they need simply does not arrive. In Tokyo, Hanoi, and Seoul, drivers pull into gas stations and stare at numbers they have never seen. Oil hits over $200 a barrel. It is a massive, overnight shock to the system that empties wallets and changes daily life on a global scale. And all of this chaos traces back to the tension right here, in this tight corridor of water. When you sail through the strait today, you do not just see commercial shipping. You see an environment primed for a spark. Fast Iranian patrol boats zip between the colossal tankers like hornets. Tucked away along the jagged, rocky shoreline are heavy missile launches, aimed directly at the shipping lanes. Surveillance drones buzz endlessly overhead. Beneath the dark surface, everyone knows there are smart minds, sitting quietly, waiting. This does not feel like a trade route. It feels like a military zone, where everyone is holding their breath. For the captains navigating these waters, the stress is crushing. Every move is tracked by radar and coastal cameras. One captain called it the longest, most terrifying afternoon of his life. You are trapped in the middle. You might get a radio call from a coastal station demanding your cargo details, while a foreign warship immediately chimes in, telling you to ignore them. It is a psychological tug-of-war. A single tiny error in navigation, or a misunderstood radio signal, could be viewed as an act of war. Everyone is holding onto a massive, fragile crate of dynamite, and everyone is getting very tired of holding it. But beneath this terrifying geopolitical chess match lies something even more profound. A geological reality that has practiced survival far longer than any nation. Just 5 miles off the coast, a piece of land rises from the water that looks like a hallucination. This is Hormuz Island. Stepping onto its shores feels like landing on the surface of Mars. The ground is a startling, deep crimson. When the waves hit the shore, they look like dark red ink, or spilled wine bleeding into the blue Persian Gulf. This is not a trick of the light. The island is a salt diapuy an ancient mass of compressed salt and volcanic rock that punched its way up from the ocean floor 600 million years ago. It is saturated with iron oxide and hematite. The ground radiates heat. It is a giant geological laboratory that has never stopped moving. You might think a place this harsh is uninhabitable, but the people here do not just endure this red dirt. They eat it. The locals call this deep red soil galak. They grind it down into a spice. They mix it into their flatbread. They stir it into their fish stews. They consume the very earth that foreign powers fight over. What looks to an outsider like an impossible landscape is, to them, simply dinner. It is a masterpiece of human adaptation. Look to the northern edge of the island, and you will see the rotting stone of a massive fort. 500 years ago, the Portuguese Empire built these walls to control the global spice and silk trade. They used the local coral and the bleeding red earth. Today, the empire is gone. The walls are dissolving back into the mud. The island reclaims everything. Move further down the strait, and the landscape shifts again into a massive maze of salt and heat. Keshem Island. It is the largest island in the Persian Gulf. Here, the summer temperature routinely crushes past 115 degrees. The humidity wraps around you like a wet, suffocating blanket. But the people of Keshem did not run from the heat. They weaponized it. Look at the ancient port city of Laft. The skyline is pierced by tall, strange rectangular chimneys. These are the wind towers, the badgers. They are an ancient, brilliant form of air conditioning. These towers catch the slightest breeze high above the blazing ground and funnel it down through a series of chambers. They cool the air by 20 degrees without a single watt of electricity. They have worked perfectly for 1,000 years. Down on the shore, the sound of heavy hammers echoes over the water. Men are building massive wooden ships, nearly 100 feet long. These are the lenge boats. They will sail across the open ocean, surviving brutal storms. Yet, there are no blueprints. There are no paper plans. There are no digital models. These ocean-going vessels are built entirely from memory. The masters rely on their eyes and the feeling of the wood, the exact curve of the bow, the precise angle of the keel, is passed down from father to son. It is a craft recognized by UNESCO, held entirely in the minds of a few aging men. If the memory fades, the ships vanish forever. Not far from these boatyards, a massive green illusion floats on the salt water. The Hara Forest. Millions of gray mangrove trees grow directly out of the ocean. They have evolved an impossible trick. Their roots filter the toxic salt, allowing the tree to drink the seawater and expel the crystals through their leaves. It is a natural desalination plant, operating in one of the driest places on Earth. But this sanctuary is sitting directly next to the world's busiest oil lanes. One major spill, one military accident, and the oil will choke those intricate roots. The forest will die, and the sea life it nurtures will die with it. Cross the water to the towering limestone cliffs of Oman, the Arabian Peninsula. These are the Arabian fjords. The cliffs drop hundreds of feet straight into dark emerald water. It feels majestic, but deeply claustrophobic. Tucked inside this natural fortress is a tiny, sun-scorched rock called Telegraph Island. In 1864, the British Empire chose this isolated stone to be a critical nerve center. They laid the first submarine telegraph cable connecting London to Mumbai. They put young soldiers here to control the flow of global information. But the heat was a weapon. Summer temperatures soared above 120 degrees. The crushing silence and the furnace of the sun broke their minds. This is where the phrase, "going round the bend," was born. It referred to the long, maddening boat journey around these cliffs. To reach this lonely outpost, the British learned exactly what the modern superpowers are learning today. Controlling the strait extracts a heavy, psychological toll. The old cables are gone now, but the watching never stopped. Look up at the jagged ridges of these mountains. High above the water, hidden radar stations and military observation posts stare out at the sea. They are the silent sentinels, monitoring every single pulse of the 20 million barrels of oil sliding past their feet. Hidden deep within these rugged cliffs is a place geography tried to keep secret, the village of Kumser. You cannot drive here. You can only arrive by crossing the choppy sea. The people of Kumser sit on their rooftops and watch the massive gray warships and oil tankers glide by just a few miles away. But the most startling thing about this village is the sound of their voices. They speak Kumseri, the forbidden language. You will not hear this tongue anywhere else on the planet. It is a bizarre, beautiful puzzle. It blends ancient Persian, Arabic, traces of Hindi, Portuguese, and early English. It is a living fossil. Every empire that passed through this strait over the centuries stopped here for water, leaving a fragment of their words behind. The language is a mirror of the strait itself, a collision of worlds surviving against all odds. Isolation is the only thing that protected them. Move south away from the cliffs, and the landscape shifts from stone to silver. Hengam Island. The shoreline here actually sparkles under the brutal sun. The sand is packed with a mineral called mica, acting like millions of tiny silver mirrors. The water here is clear, warm, and surprisingly alive. Wild pods of Indo-Pacific bottlenose dolphins race alongside the small wooden fishing boats. They do not care about international maritime borders. They do not recognize the military patrol zones. And at night, the water itself puts on a show. Bioluminescence. Microscopic life near the surface gets agitated by the waves, producing a cold, blue-green light. It looks like the sea is generating its own electricity. It is a moment of pure, undisturbed nature, operating completely indifferent to the high-stakes political war games happening just over the horizon. But the contrast between nature and human ambition is sharpest on Kish Island. They call it the Dubai of Iran, a glittering mirage of free trade, luxury resorts, and white sand. But its location makes it a critical, silent observer of the energy corridor. Underneath the luxury malls, a different kind of survival is carved into stone. 52 feet underground lies an ancient network of tunnels. The Kanats. 2,500 years ago, human hands carved these channels to carry and filter water. They dug through solid, fossilized coral. You can walk through these tunnels today by electric light and look up above your head. Embedded in the ceiling are the fossilized shells of ancient sea creatures. It is an involuntary museum of deep time, recording a moment when this desert was the bottom of the ocean. Back on the surface, sitting in the shallow turquoise water, is a massive, rusting skeleton. The Greek ship. It ran aground in 1966 and simply never left. Today, coral colonizes its steel engine room. At sunset, its dark silhouette looks like a giant, petrified warning. It shows exactly what happens when the delicate balance of navigating these waters goes wrong. It is deteriorating at the exact same pace as the political stability around it. Everything here is warning us. The sea itself is issuing an alarm. The Persian Gulf is hot. In the summer, the water temperature hits 96 degrees. Anywhere else on Earth, that kind of heat would cause mass coral bleaching and total ecological death. But the reefs here have survived thousands of years of extreme thermal stress. They have evolved. They hold the biological secret to surviving a boiling ocean. Yet, they cannot outrun the shadow fleets. They cannot survive the constant oil runoff and the military anchors tearing through their beds. Even the hawksbill sea turtles are running out of time. They navigate by the Earth's magnetic field returning to the exact beaches where they were born. But the warming Gulf water is altering a fundamental law of nature. The extreme heat of the sand dictates the sex of the turtles inside the eggs. The hotter the sand, the more females are born. The biological balance is skewing so hard that they are pushing toward the edge of reproductive collapse. The environment is screaming that the limits have been reached. This is the reality of the Strait of Hormuz. It is not just an energy corridor. It is a terrifying preview of our own future. We look at this 21-mile gap and believe we can control it with treaties, with surveillance drones, and with the sheer weight of global money. But the people who live here know the truth. They do not fight the extreme heat. They build wind towers to bend it. They do not fear the toxic salt. They let the mangrove roots filter it. They do not reject the harsh red earth. They eat it. They know that survival is not a technology you invent. It is a language you must learn to speak perfectly. The world holds its breath every time a supertanker threads the needle past the coastal missiles. We pray the oil flows. We pray the engines of the modern world do not stop. We assume the geography will simply tolerate our demands forever. But the crumbling forts, the rusting ghost ships, and the bleeding crimson sands all tell the same story. The strait is not a machine we can operate. It is a fragile, ancient predator, patiently waiting for us to blink.